There we go.
Oh, great. Awesome.
Hello.
Hello, how are
I'm
you?
doing well. How are you?
I'm fine too. I am fine. I'm fine. So I'm just trying to, we just wait a bit for people to let us know that people are in. Just give them a few minutes
Okay.
to get into the call. We have just two persons here right now. Okay, I think so. I'm trying to let people know that. So, just two persons. Okay. We just wait for maybe 2-3 minutes,
Okay.
just to let people know that okay we're here and they can see if they want to join, and I'm sure your contacts as well can see that you are
Yeah.
live. Mhm. So, so I'm excited to have this conversation and I've been looking forward to it. I have been looking forward to it. And this is the reason that, let me tell you before people start joining in, I've been looking forward to this because I'm that one person who do not think that ADH should be a disorder,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm that one person that think that it shouldn't be a disorder. It should be a norm. Like that's people's lives. Like those are people's lives. Why do you call it a disorder? Why is it called a disorder?
Yeah.
Right? So I have that bias for that word ADH. So I'm always scared to call the D because
Yeah.
I am very skeptical. I'm very skeptical with calling the D. So yeah, that's why I'm excited to hear you to
Yeah.
speak to you today about this. Right, all right, all right. Hello everyone. Welcome to our Instagram live conversation today. I think this is the second or just we've not had so many Instagram lives, but this particular one is special because we are approaching World Mental Health Day on October 10th, but we decided to do this ahead of that day because we know that a lot of conversations will be on and people might just lose track of these conversations that are very critical. And this year, the theme for World Mental Health Day is it's time to prioritize mental health in the workplace. But for us, we want to extend this to both the workplace because whatever happens at home kind of filters into the workplace, whether we like it or not. So today we're talking about ADHD impact on family and work. That's building a supportive mental health culture in the family and workplace. And I am joined by Lola Faleti. She is a life coach and hypnotherapist. I don't know why I love that. I love adding that to your info.
Yes.
It tickles me. It tickles me. Thank you so much for being here, Lola. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Great, great. It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. I mean, VOA is about inclusivity and promoting that one culture where people are accepted, people are you build an environment where people are comfortable to be in, and that's why VOA has been founded. And so, before we get right, of course, we've already gotten right into the conversation. Can you share with us? What it is like. You have identified as someone who has ADHD, and before this conversation, I was telling you that I do not like the word. I don't like adding the D to the ADH because for me, I do not see it as a disorder. But can you share your experience with us? What it is like living with ADHD, and how did you first realize you had ADHD? What is ADHD for crying out
Yeah.
loud?
So ADHD is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It's actually a
Hmm.
neurodevelopmental disorder, and it's typically categorized by patterns of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. And in its most severe form, it can severely impact daily life. Not everybody has the hyperactivity. Some people just have the inattentive or attention deficit. Um, but life with ADHD, it's interesting. It feels like I always have 100 tabs open in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I didn't actually find out that I had ADHD until my late 20s. A lot of people get diagnosed as children. Um, but for most of my life, I felt like something was a little different about me, but I didn't have a clue that I was neurodivergent. And neurodivergent is just a term to describe people whose brains work differently than what's categorized as typical. So I really like that term, neurodivergent, because it implies that there is diversity in our brain functions. Personally, I view ADHD as a spectrum, just like autism, right? Our brains all work differently,
Okay.
and I consider my ADHD to be a superpower. So, given that I didn't find out until I was an adult, um, looking back on my life, the reflecting, it makes sense. I was always restless as a child. I talked a lot. My brain processed new information very quickly. My brain worked very fast. I always got good grades in school. I know a lot of kids who have ADHD may struggle with school. Um, I never really struggled with school, but I did struggle with hyperfixations and needing dopamine. So if I was interested in something or if there was something that I liked, I would be laser focused on it and it would be hard to switch
Yeah.
tasks. So I was always reading and taking in a lot of information. But it's also very funny because a lot of things that like I was called as a child by my parents were actually all symptoms of ADHD. I was told that I was restless. There's a term in Yoruba, yakinsu, like she doesn't sleep. Like I did not like to take naps. I would fight against nap time when I was a child. I either talked too loudly or too much or too fast. I was easily
Mm-hmm.
distracted. I was lazy. But honestly, like
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't lazy. I just was overwhelmed or I needed a
Yeah.
more engaging or interesting way to do things.
Yeah.
And I know I remember as a child, because I'm the eldest daughter. I have two younger brothers. My
Okay.
room was always messy, not because I liked it that way, but I don't know, cleaning it was so overwhelming and stressful. I struggled with the executive function of planning. Like I would just look at my room and see it and I'd be like, how am I going to get it clean? And then I would just wallow in stress. I didn't really have the ability to break things down
Yeah.
into smaller tasks because I was always looking at the bigger picture and
Mm-hmm.
getting overwhelmed by that. And there's so much more that I can say. But anyway, fast forward to adulthood. I've started actually seeing Black women online talking about their experiences being diagnosed with ADHD.
Yeah.
And I was like, are they living my life? It was so relatable. And
Mm-hmm.
back in 2014, when I was 20 years old, I was diagnosed with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, which is it's another form of being neurodivergent.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm wondering if it was a misdiagnosis, and it was ADHD. So I was seeing women talking about it, and in partnering with my therapist and online screening, I was like, wow, like I've spent the most of my life with moderate to
Mm-hmm.
severe ADHD and I didn't
Yeah.
realize it. And for a lot of people, for a lot of Black women, for a lot of people of color,
Mm-hmm.
getting an official diagnosis can be cost prohibitive, but there are
Yeah.
plenty of free resources. So if you're someone, if anyone here is listening, and you feel like you have ADHD, there are so many online resources, screening tools that you can use to
Hmm.
test. The diagnostic criteria are heavily modeled around young white boys. Um, they are completely different culturally. And so it is important to have resources that are helpful for people who are not young white boys.
Hmm. Hmm. Sorry. So that's really amazing. But like I said to you when we started, I said, so why is it called a disorder if this is just who the person is? Because now that you're talking, while I was doing all my research about ADHD, I was like, this is me. I don't have a disorder.
I mean,
I don't have a
it's interesting to think about, right? Because in the United States, ADHD is actually classified as a disability, and that's why a lot of people don't seek an official diagnosis because they don't want to disclose a disability. Personally, I don't feel like I have a disability. I feel like I have a
this
superpower. Like,
superpower.
but I
Yeah.
think you have to have the right accommodations for yourself so that you're
Mm-hmm.
working with your brain and not against it.
Mm-hmm.
I love having ADHD because it makes life so exciting and so fast, but also
Exciting.
there are downsides to it too. Um, and I've always felt different my whole life. It doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
finding
Mm-hmm.
out that I'm actually different,
Yeah.
it didn't make a difference to me. But I kind of agree with you. Like when I look at it, I look at people, there are 8 billion people on this planet. Um, I think the term neurodivergent, like when I tell people, like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily say, like, yeah, I have ADHD. I'm like, I'm neurodivergent. I'm neurospicy. My brain's a little different. And they understand.
Right. Right, right. Okay, I think that's probably a good term. That's a good way to term it now. Because but did this um how has ADHD impacted your relationship? Did it have any impact on your relationship? Because one, like you said, the part about accommodations, you believe that there should be a sort of accommodations for ADHD people, understanding that these people are different from you and understanding their process and how to work with them. So I think there are, of course, we'll get there, but how did this impact your relationship and what strategies or how were you able to maintain strong connections despite all of those impacts?
Yeah, I mean, starting with my family relationships, I
Mm-hmm.
will say, like, I also always felt a little different from my family. Um, Sometimes, as a kid, I would feel like I wasn't good enough because even though I was able to meet my parents' high expectations, I did struggle internally. I didn't have the
Mm-hmm.
language because, again, I was a child. I didn't really have the language to communicate it or my struggles because I didn't understand. And it made me very depressed. As a child, I had good relationships with my friends. But then again, when you're young and in school, like you have the people around you, it's not really hard to keep
Yeah.
friendships. But as an
Mm-hmm.
adult, my relationships are a bit more complex. I can't say that ADHD has negatively impacted my
Mm-hmm.
relationships, but I do struggle to keep in touch with people who aren't actively keeping in touch with me because I get easily overwhelmed. Like, I know, like, my mom is really good at maintaining relationships with everyone. I can't do that. Like, it's so overwhelming for me, whether it's family relationships or friend relationships. And I also tend to make very close connections with people who either have autism or have ADHD as well. And there's people who have both ADHD. So having a neurodiverse group of friends who understand me and I
Mm-hmm.
understand them,
Yeah.
it changes everything. And my partner is very supportive. I
Right.
think he celebrates me as I am and makes me
Mm-hmm.
feel powerful as I am, which is
Mm-hmm.
good. Although I will say ADHD has also landed me in friendships that haven't been good or supportive. People who are neurotypical, um,
Mm-hmm.
like on the surface, because I think there's a stigma of how people who are neurodivergent should look or behave. So people will think I'm normal. And then as they get to know me and they see that I'm quirky and I'm different, because I don't fit the mold that they have in their
Mm-hmm.
head, that can sometimes cause
Mm-hmm.
tension. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and my work relationships when I was in corporate America, they were fine. Work was stressful though, but I know we're going to talk about that. But
Mm-hmm.
all in all, I try to make relationships with people who I feel align with my life because those are the easiest to
Yeah.
maintain.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. At least you didn't have all of those many issues, but at least you had your own fair share of friends wanting you to fit into a box that you couldn't. You were not
Yeah,
even that box.
it's like, there's these children's toys where they
Mhm.
have to put the shapes in the hole. And so for
Yeah.
me it's like they're trying to put a triangle in a hole that's shaped
In
like a
a,
star. I don't
yeah.
know. It doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Now, I want to ask, how can families and friends better support loved ones with ADHD?
Yes.
And what has worked for you?
Yeah, so I my one piece of advice that I always tell people in all the work that I do, engage with curiosity and not with judgment. If you're a parent of a child who has ADHD or who is just generally neurodivergent, be compassionate. Don't expect your child to know everything. You're When you're thinking of children, they just got here. Children do not
Mm-hmm.
know what they're doing. They are learning. This is
Mm-hmm.
everybody's first time here in this lived experience. So have some compassion. So, for example, going back to cleaning of the room, if your child struggles with cleaning their room, instead of beating them or calling them names or shouting at them, seek to understand why it's an issue and how you can support them. Um, what if they just need a plan for how to clean and organize? That will go a long way to soothe their anxiety. For me as a kid, like, I wish I would have been able to talk to my parents about struggling to clean my room and receive support. Because maybe if they were like, okay, let's start here and then go here, or don't do it
Right.
all in one day, don't try to do it all in 1 hour. That level of support um would have gone a long way. And though I never struggled in school, if I did, I would have loved some extra support with my schoolwork, that kind of thing. Like curiosity, like I said, like curiosity builds intimacy in your close relationships, and you'll build better relationships throughout life, whether you are neurodivergent or not. If you engage someone like with the mindset of how can I support you even though you are different from me or different from what I expect.
Hmm. But is there any significant difference between ADHD in children and in adults?
Um so I would say yes. Um
Okay.
ADHD doesn't usually spontaneously develop as an adult. It's something that happens when you're born.
Oh,
Now, there are some people, like if you have complex PTSD, um,
mm-hmm.
that is an example of a neurodivergence that can be
Okay.
onset as
Mm-hmm.
an adult and
Yeah.
can lead to symptoms of ADHD. But if you're an adult, and you're now undiagnosed,
Right.
you were able to go undetected like me. Now, in children, ADHD may manifest as, again, like restlessness. So, a kid who's unable to sit still in class, a kid who is talking too much. ADHD symptoms in children are more projected outwards because they are kids. in adults, we tend to internalize our symptoms. So,
Yeah.
whereas a kid who is having trouble sitting down in class and is like expressing that, if you're an adult and you're in a meeting, like I struggled with meetings, all these long unnecessary meetings when I was working a 9 to 5.
Mhm.
um
Mhm.
it'll be like my thoughts will just be going crazy because I'm like I'm sitting still, like I would have to have like something to fidget with because I'm like, this is,
Right.
it's like torture having to sit
Mhm.
still.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm. Mhm.
as adults, you'll probably have a higher proclivity for engaging in risky behavior.
Mm.
Um, so as an adult, you may seek adrenaline, you may drive faster. Some adults engage in risky sexual behaviors. Some adults engage in substance abuse, like on the extreme
On
sides.
the extreme
Um,
side.
yeah, some adults may struggle to maintain meaningful relationships or hold down a job. Um,
Mm.
so there's a lot of, everyone is different. Men and women are different, and their cultural influences on how your ADHD can show up as well.
Show up. Yeah.
And then also
So
one
so
more
it
thing for adults,
yeah.
your
Mhm.
finances. So compulsive shopping, impulse buying, addiction, shopping
Yeah.
addiction. That's actually
Impulse
something
buying.
I struggled with. I struggled with shopping. So
I think I can relate. I can relate. So there should be a solution to this. And I think everybody, um, I think we have overhyped this situation and that we tend to stay in that point where everybody just feels, let us stay at that point. Because I feel like, where do we draw the line? Now, where do we draw the line, from bad character to ADHD? Do you
yeah,
understand? Like,
yeah,
for instance, you're somebody, if you're somebody who spends, just spends, you just, compulsive buying, what do you do to work on yourself?
yeah,
So I think that if you have these parts of you that can put you in danger, then you should be conscious about what you should do to help yourself to
yeah,
get better,
yeah.
right? So that leads
100%.
me, mhm. Go ahead, please.
No, yeah, I mean, I'm of the belief that once you are aware and it's
Hmm.
no longer an unconscious thing that's driving you, it is
Right.
your responsibility to heal. A lot of people will actually use neurodivergence as an excuse for poor
Mm-hmm.
behavior, when in
Hmm.
reality, the onus is on
Hmm.
you to take accountability and get better. Um, so for using
Accountability. Yes.
shopping as an example, like I know for
Hmm.
me, shopping, impulse buying, like it didn't get me into much trouble. So it was harmless for the most part, but when I started to pay attention to myself, I started to see, oh, I use this as a way to emotionally regulate. So how can I develop a healthier regulation strategy? And
Mm-hmm.
so because I was getting so much dopamine from like going to Sephora or buying a new pair of shoes, I would try to regulate by putting that money in a savings account or doing breath
Right.
work, doing meditation. So finding a healthier
Mm-hmm.
way to regulate my body really helped
Mm.
me.
Really helped you. Wow. Awesome. Awesome. I think that's something that everybody should take out from this conversation eventually when they listen to it. Now, another question I want to ask is, okay, stemming from your answer right now. So what resources and support systems have you found helpful throughout your journey?
Ooh, yes. There are so many. I will say on there's some people who are medicated. I have chosen to not be medicated. I don't want to take Adderall or Vyvanse. I don't think my ADHD is that impactful
That
on
bad.
the quality of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, there's a group on Facebook that I'm part of for neurodivergent Black women. So having other Black
Okay.
women sharing their stories, sharing how they navigate things, I learned really
Okay.
well through storytelling. So that helps for
Mm-hmm.
me. Therapy, having a
Mm-hmm.
therapist, having friends who
Mm-hmm.
are neurodivergent. Honestly, if you're neurodivergent, if you have ADHD, if you have autism or both, if you have any form of neurodivergence, you need friends who are also neurodiverse.
Right.
Um, TikTok. TikTok and Instagram have been incredible resources. I felt like I lost most of my 20s to ADHD. I didn't realize that I had ADHD. And had I known, I maybe would have made different financial decisions. I would have made different
Mm-hmm.
dating decisions. I would have made different friendship decisions. I spent all those
Right.
years trying to be normal when I didn't realize, like, I'm different and that's okay. Um, Now there's even eating, nutrition, wellness,
Mm-hmm.
and then tools like ChatGPT is a great resource for me because it helps me
Right.
when my brain is moving too quickly. It will help me figure
Mm-hmm.
out what to focus, especially as a business owner. Running a
Right.
business while you have ADHD is an extreme sport, but I love it. I think this is the only way that I should be making money because corporate America was very
Mm-hmm.
bad for my mental health. And then there's a
Mm-hmm.
tool called Goblin Tools. It's an AI platform that
Okay. What do you call
it
it?
enables. It's called Goblin Tools,
Goblin.
and it's a really good resource for organizing your thoughts, for breaking tasks down. So if I'm taking on a project and I'm struggling to even figure out where to begin because I'm so overwhelmed, it will break it down into very small, specific tasks for me so that I can continue to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different resources out there,
Wow.
from screening tools, there's different websites to test for your
Mm-hmm.
ADHD symptoms and then get further help. Um,
Right.
so yeah, those are the resources I found supportive for my journey.
Great. Great. Thank you so much. I actually noted down some of the things you because before this conversation, like I stated before, I didn't know I had ADHD. I just felt that a lot of people didn't understand me. I
Yeah,
just felt that
yes.
I was not, I felt different most of the time. I felt different. I
Yeah.
felt like people were, like, I couldn't keep certain friends for a long time because I feel they didn't understand me. Like,
Yeah.
I was this, you can, when you meet me at first, you feel, oh, this person is very cool. But my thinking is,
Yeah.
I am thinking,
Yes.
you're thinking like this, and my head is everywhere.
Yes.
My head is everywhere most
Yeah.
of the time. Yeah,
Exactly.
I got to a point. I got to a point. I got tired of my job. I got tired of my 9 to 5 because I didn't like routines. I've never been somebody who liked routines. So I was frustrated. I was always frustrated. I was overwhelmed. And
Yeah.
when somebody asks me what is wrong, and I'm explaining to them, they're like,
Yeah,
they don't understand
exactly.
how I feel. They
Yeah.
don't understand it. So I got to a point and I told myself that I'm going to do me. I'm going to choose what is best for me. And
Yes.
I am glad I did it. I am glad
Yeah.
I did it. It is scary, but it is scary when you do what is for you. What every
It
other
is.
person feels.
You have
It's
to
very
feel the
scary.
fear. You feel the
Mhm,
fear and you do it anyway. And I think being
mhm,
Nigerian and having ADHD, it's so interesting because I think for me, there's no way my parents would have known. My
mhm,
parents were immigrants.
mm,
So they didn't have the resources. And again, a
mhm,
lot of the diagnostic criteria are based on white boys. So And then for
Mm,
girls, specifically for girls with ADHD, we tend to internalize anyway. We
right.
because we're being raised differently.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of my ADHD traits, again, like they were either viewed as character flaws, or the positive traits were like, oh wow, she's so smart. Like I learned to read
Okay.
and speak and write at a very, very young age. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like the good parts were really good, and the bad parts, they were just like character flaws that maybe she'll grow out of it, or we can train her differently. And I don't think my experience is unique. And so a lot of us
Mm-hmm.
go undetected for that
Mm-hmm.
reason, because
Mm-hmm.
we don't really fit the box of even
Yeah.
what ADHD
Yeah.
is the standard of what it looks like.
Mhm. Yes, yes, and that's I was going to ask you why ADHD is often undiagnosed in adults. Many times it just goes on undiagnosed and everybody just moving and living life and you feel it's a character flaw. Then you
Yeah,
see most of these people, like you said, having things like depression. You find them having depression or they go into excessiveness of most of
yeah,
these things just because
yeah,
of that undiagnosis.
yeah. So again, like you're probably able to go undetected because either you internalized all of your symptoms, or there were no adults around you who were like, hey, something's up with this child. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and specifically in an African household, unless a child is physically disabled or has a disability that impacts speech, or their motor skills, the negative manifestations of ADHD are just written off as character traits that a parent can train a child out of. And
Mm-hmm.
because that's just the way your brain works, you never really grow out of it. You just internalize it
Mm-hmm.
and sweep it under the rug.
Right.
Um, and it's funny because I was told that I talked a lot as a child, but now I talk every day on social media, teaching people about growth and healing. So, like, was it really that much of a bad thing, you know? So that's why a lot of people go undiagnosed. They normalize their symptoms and think that that's just how they are, and they don't get help until something major happens in their lives. Like in my last job, I was talking to a good colleague and friend of mine, and she said she's a
Mhm.
white woman, but
Okay.
she didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until she was in university, because she was
Right.
struggling in university. She struggled so badly. And I think one of her professors or someone told her, hey, like, go get help, like go maybe test for ADHD. So it's until people
Right.
get burnt out, or they get into a situation that's they don't have the capacity for, um
Mm-hmm.
then that's when they'll get their diagnosis as an adult.
Wow. Wow. That's something. I think you've touched a bit about the consequences of undiagnosed ADHD. You've touched on it, but would you like to say something more about it?
um so one risk that I really, really want to talk about is burnout. um
Burnout.
Neurodivergent burnout is a real thing. It's part of the reason why I left my corporate job. I was physically and emotionally unwell because of burnout. And it's a lot of factors, right? Like trying to align with a schedule that doesn't fit how I naturally work, having to
Mm-hmm.
remember so many details, having to deal, I was an HR business partner, so having to do all of these things, not taking care of myself because of my work schedule, feeling
Yeah.
the weight of being so different, but not
Mm-hmm.
receiving support. It led me to like a point where my I just started shutting down. And burnout is it, I, it felt like my burnout was severe. Honestly, once it starts to impact your physical and mental health, it is severe. But there are some people who can't even get out of bed. There are some people who their skills start to regress, and they can't function, they can't do anything. And it's a catch 22 because in this society, in this economy, you have to make a living, you have to work, or else you can't pay your bills. There's
Yeah,
no
yeah.
way
The
around it,
hustle culture.
unfortunately. So I think just being careful and being mindful of burnout, the only way to avoid burnout is to really, really take care of yourself and structure your life in a way that is supportive of all aspects of who you are, that incorporates rest, good nutrition, quality time with friends and family. Um, you have to pour into yourself so that you don't burn out.
Okay, so pour into yourself so that you do not burn out, because one of the consequences, consequences is burnout, and all of these things can filter into many other things as well.
Exactly.
I'm actually digesting a lot of things because this has been me for the longest of times. It's been me for the longest of time. Maybe that'll be a conversation for another time, or maybe the two of us will have a separate
Yes,
conversation about.
absolutely.
Yeah, because I got to a point and I said, "Oh no, I've had enough. I have had enough, and I just had to
Exactly.
do." Yes,
I
I
think
had to do. Even yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say the turning point for me was looking at how I was feeling and then realizing
Mm-hmm.
I was going to have to keep doing this for because the retirement age in the US is 65. And I was like, there's no way I can do this for 35 more years. Absolutely no
No.
way. I can't do it. I would rather face the consequences of trying to make my
Mm-hmm.
own way, but I can't do this.
Mm-hmm. 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 That's the point. When you get to that point, you just know that you need to do something better. Now, how should this be even treated? Because many times, like I said before, I do not want to. I don't think I should see this as a disorder. But since we
Mhm.
are here,
Yeah.
where it is being treated as a disorder, um, of course, it's not a sickness,
Yeah.
right? Because I
So
hear
I
you
was going
say
to say
things like
ADHD,
medication.
it's a disorder, but it's not a sickness. Like it
Mm,
at at your very core, your brain functions differently. It's a disorder because it impacts your executive function. So your executive
okay.
function um, oversees things like task initiation. Procrastination is a symptom that I still struggle with. I struggle with task
Yeah.
initiation, sometimes task completion, focusing on multiple tasks, but then not completing any of them. But
Mhm.
I will say when it's approached as a disorder, it does make it a little easier to understand, treat, and be in someone's life who has ADHD because I mean that's just how their brain works. But
Mhm.
I don't think it's something that necessarily needs to be healed. Like I'm
Mhm.
personally not looking to make my ADHD. Oh, hi. That's my cat. Um,
Yeah, I see
I'm
that.
personally, I'm not trying to make my ADHD go away, but
Mhm.
like I approaching it as a disorder helps me work with my brain and not against it.
Okay.
And
Okay.
something that for me has helped is adopting slow living. Slow living has made my ADHD 10 times easier to manage. And it makes
Okay.
my life so much better because when you have ADHD, it kind of feels like you're rushing through life. It feels like everything is happening at the
Mhm.
same time.
Mhm. At once. Yeah.
You have to do everything at the same time. Even
Yeah.
sometimes, like when there's dishes in the sink and I want to put them in the dishwasher, it can stress me out. It can overwhelm me. And I have to like
Yeah.
breathe. I have to take a deep breath because I'm not thinking of putting the dishes away one at a time. I'm like, every single one
Mhm.
of these dishes needs to be in the dishwasher and I need to do it now. But then
Now,
I take
now.
a deep breath and I'm like, you know what? I force myself to slowly do it. I force myself to slowly,
Mhm.
so
Okay.
slowing down is like, it's a mindset. And it's
Mhm.
changed my life for the better.
Mhm. 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 Slowing down. I think that's one thing I learned to do eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually taking, because I can look at things and I'm like, my heart starts racing. Like,
It's too
what's this? This is
much.
too much.
It's
Like,
too
what?
much. Yes.
It's too much. So I learned slow living. Okay, take it one after the other. Do not
Yes.
rush it. Just do it.
Exactly.
Do what you
Because
can do.
I think it makes a cycle, right? You get overwhelmed, and as a result of being overwhelmed, you don't do anything. So nothing
Yeah.
happens. And that's kind of what happened with my room as a kid. Like, I would
Mm-hmm.
just be like, oh, I don't want to do this, it's too much. But then when you actually slow down and you focus on doing one step at a time, first I'm going to do this,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm going to do this. You may think it's slowing things down, but you're actually buying yourself more time, because instead of
Of
leaving
time.
something to the last minute, um
Mm-hmm.
you're doing a little day by
Mm-hmm.
day, and then it builds up and you're actually no
Right.
longer overwhelmed.
Right. 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 So I think are there things like let me see now, because I know ADHD people do not like routines, but are there what do they call them now? Applications like the ones like you mentioned, Googling tools. Are there ones that are specifically for ADHD people?
I am sure there are so many. I personally don't use any apps because I'm a little bit of an app hoarder. And one thing, and you may be able to relate to this, but with ADHD, I have like shiny toy syndrome. So like I'll get an app, and then I'll use it for a week and then I abandon it.
But we
Not every single app is like that. There are some apps that I use daily,
yeah,
but if it's not a part of my routine, it just gives me a very short dopamine rush and then I forget about it. But
after a while.
I think systems, instead of looking for tools, looking for systems help me so much. So for example,
Okay.
I I'm still trying to figure out my relationship to routine. Um Routine is fine, but I think it's kind of boring. And so there's something I've been seeing on TikTok. It's the concept of a dopamine menu. And so let's
Okay.
say there are different things you can do in the morning for your morning routine,
Okay.
different things you do in
Mm-hmm.
the afternoon, different things you do in the evening. You can kind of select which one you want to do, like a menu
Okay.
at a restaurant, so you
Okay.
can rotate your daily routine. It doesn't look the
Mm-hmm.
same. Another really good tool that I see, and this is also helpful for people who have autism,
Okay. Okay.
creating time buckets. So let's say in the morning, like for example, and I'll use my schedule for example. My mornings, working a 9 to 5 was like hell for me. Like it was going against everything. So in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
like I slow down. Maybe do one or two things differently. Like maybe one
Yeah.
morning I'll go for a walk, um, or
Mm-hmm.
I'll meditate or do an exercise.
Okay.
And then I have
Okay.
a block of time for my creative activities. And then those
Okay.
creative activities can rotate, but like kind of structuring it as a framework instead of a strict hourly schedule. So it's like I know
Yeah.
how I'm
Mm-hmm.
sectioning my time every day. I know the
Okay.
kinds of
Okay.
activities that I'm going to do, but it doesn't have to be the same
Okay.
activity.
Same time.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And the same. It doesn't have to be the same time or the same
No,
activity.
exactly. It's just you have like these, okay, I'm going to have time for this today. I'm going to have time for this today. And when it
Right.
happens, but it's like a loose way to have a
Mm-hmm.
routine. So you
Right.
keep your life together, but you're
Mhm.
still engaging your brain
Right.
in a fun way.
Right. Right. That's great. That's awesome. So how can schools now, let's bring it down to, VOA Charity, we have a lot of parents, we have a lot of teachers support,
Yeah.
how can schools better manage or support students with ADHD? After we talk about schools, then I'd like you to also speak about organizations. How can
Yeah,
organizations ensure that, just touch on those two areas for me.
absolutely. Well, when I was in school, I don't recall seeing kids with ADHD get support. Kids with autism, and other disorders and other
Yeah.
things going on, they got support.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, it was particularly the white boys who had ADHD and were distractions. They were just seen as
Mhm.
distractions, but they didn't get additional support. And then for me, like, I was put in different classes because there's a program called Gifted and Talented, which I'm
Oh.
now coming to realize was just kids on the other side of the spectrum. Like, so kids who were really smart, but like all of us had ADHD. Some of us had
Uh,
autism, some had both. So, instead of separating students, I think creating flexible learning environments. So
mhm.
having kids sit at a classroom, like, and these desks all arranged in order, that can be tough for a kid with ADHD. If there are
Mhm.
environments where maybe they had desks that are standing desks or desks that can rise and fall, some
Mhm.
kids like to sit on the floor and learn. I think changing up the
Fine.
structure of the classroom, um,
Okay.
individualized instruction where feasible.
Mhm.
Kids learn at different paces. Honestly, whether you have ADHD or not, you will
Mhm.
not learn at the same pace as the person next to you. And so,
Right.
where possible, providing additional support for a kid with ADHD who maybe learns a little bit faster, give them more
Mhm.
resources, give them like a deeper level of instruction, because those are the kids that are going to be raising their hands, fidgeting in class, trying
Yeah.
to, they're not trying
Mhm.
to be a distraction, but they need to stay engaged. And then also
Mhm.
technology tools. A lot of classrooms now, especially in the States, are tech heavy. And so
Mhm.
leveraging AI tools wherever possible, teaching children to how to build their own routines as well. I think
Right.
that's something
Mhm.
I wish I would have learned, because even though I don't necessarily like routine, I like it. Like, I need it, but I need a
Mhm.
routine that can be modular. Like, I don't want to do the same thing every day. And then, of course, collaborating with parents. Um, in parent teacher conferences, asking a parent, instead of just telling a parent like, hey, your kid is doing really well, teachers can also seek to understand, how is this child at home, like,
Okay.
what's going on at home. It may not necessarily need to be a bad thing, but if a kid can, or if a teacher can understand how a child is in the environment that should be the safest for them,
Right.
they'll be able to provide support. And it's celebrating strengths, celebrating the
Yeah.
wins, celebrating,
Mhm.
um, where the child shines. And then if we
Right.
want to talk about an organizational level, as a former HR professional, I did my best to advocate for fellow colleagues with ADHD. So, in my professional opinion, flexible work schedules, this nine
Okay.
to five is a product of American industrialism, and somehow it
Mhm.
made its way all around the world. Working a nine
Yeah.
to five is not for everybody, unless you know you have to have a strict schedule because maybe you're in the medical field or it is directly
Right.
relevant to the work that you're doing.
Right.
Flexible working schedules, and then also learning and development stipends. Many tech companies, many big organizations will reimburse learning and development opportunities that are external. Um, I think in addition to those learning and development stipends, they should also approve or add an inclusion for ADHD coaching, ADHD support. The company that I just was working at before I left, we had a learning and development stipend. But what
Okay.
was approved was usually like, oh, go for a course, go for a workshop. But I would advocate for people who had ADHD to
Mm-hmm.
be approved for coaching, to be approved for health resources. And then, of
Right.
course, like making sure that the health insurance covers ADHD testing, ADHD medication, and support. Usually that is standard, but some companies don't have good health insurance. And then what else? I would say not forcing people to be in the office full time, unless it's necessary for the job function. Sharing agendas ahead of meetings so that people can really prepare
Right.
and know how to focus. And then instead of
Mm-hmm.
30-minute meetings, 1 hour long meetings, aim for 20-minute meetings, 50-minute meetings, be more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
And then encouraging walking meetings can be fun too. Like if you're in the office, instead of like sitting in a conference room, if there are no slides, if there's no presentations, go for a walk. If you're in even if it's just a walk around the office, if you can't go outside, that can
Mm-hmm.
go a really long way. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many
Yeah.
accommodations that can be
Many.
made, but these are some of the things that I was trying to work on as an HR pro.
Oh, so how did that go? Were they implemented?
I mean, company wide, not necessarily. People did get their funding for ADHD coaches. And I would try to lead by example. Like I would always try to share agendas, keep my meetings efficient. And there were a lot of leaders who were doing the same. The tech industry is filled with neurodivergent people, filled with people who have
Yeah.
ADHD, autism, or a combination of the two. And so I saw firsthand, like, wow, like these are neurodivergent populations, and these companies are trying to treat everyone like they're neurotypical. That's not going to work. There's one company that
Mm-hmm.
I worked at. They gave us all these headphones, and this was 2 or 3 companies ago, but I kept the headphones. And so when we were in the office, we can put the headphones on if we don't want to talk to anybody, because people with
Oh,
ADHD can be easily distracted. And
yeah.
so when you want to do the deep work, we put these
Mm-hmm.
on so that we're signaling to the people around us like, hey, I'm focusing right now, please don't talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
But if headphones
Mm-hmm.
were off, then you could be approached. And I thought it really helped keep people focused and engaged.
Oh, great, great. I have really learned a lot, and I know that our audience as well have learned a lot. And this video, thankfully, will be out and we'll post it because I think that everybody needs to listen to this because it's very informational. It is valuable. We all need it because I've always wondered how what can be done, especially in the workplace, what can be done for parents and their kids? How can parents better understand their kids? I don't know. I think you were going to touch on how we can also bring that home. How can parents understand this situation in their kids? For instance, a mother who has one perfect, in quotes, one perfect child and one that is ADHD. How do they balance these sides for these kids? For instance, let me give you a practical example.
Yeah.
My daughter comes home from school and she comes home with a lot of homework. And I tell her, because of the time, Nigerian system is funny. So I tell her, you have to do this homework now. She's somebody who gets easily distracted. So she's unable to focus. She's here, she's starting now, and she's telling me, she leaves it and she's saying something else and she wants to do something else. She's been like that I have tried, but there's no big I've been unable to crack that code with her. So sometimes what I do is to just allow her flow into it. When so one thing, another thing she does is she can start one, she won't finish it, she drops it, takes up another one and starts. And I'm like, why are you leaving this to do another one? She's like, I am tired of that one. I want to do another one. So she's there for hours because it is too much. And I have tried to tell her school that this can be cumbersome. It's not, but they don't seem to understand that perspective about the fact that this thing is cumbersome for her. It might not be for other kids, but I do not appreciate that you're giving her so much and she's having to have that,
Yeah.
that issue with balancing all of that, those sides. So for other parents who might be watching and who will still watch, what's your advice for them?
Yeah. So one thing that's coming to mind is a hybrid play and homework time. When she's been in school for 6 to 8 hours, it's
Mm-hmm.
time to come home, blow off some steam. So maybe giving her an activity that she may find engaging, or having her choose an activity to do for 15 to 30 minutes so that she can blow off some of that steam from sitting in school all day. And then she can structure her homework starting with the most difficult to the most easy. Oftentimes, like, it helps to get the most difficult out of the way because the rest is easy and you're already in flow. You're carrying that momentum through.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you notice she's starting to disengage from the task at hand,
Mm-hmm.
asking her, like, hey, would it help, what would help you finish this assignment right now? I
Okay.
think it's very much a hallmark of ADHD to switch from assignment to assignment, and that can also be okay, right? But how can you
Mm-hmm.
create a space where even if she's going from assignment to assignment, she's finishing it at the end of the day. So if she has a two
Yeah.
hour block of time to do homework, she's because it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a meal, right? You're not gonna eat
Yeah.
the egusi first and then eat the pounded yam. You eat it together.
Mhm.
Applying that to
Together.
homework too, like as a metaphor, just making sure she finishes it is the point, right? Like making sure all the homework is done, the quality is good, and collaborating with her as well, like asking her,
Right.
um, you have all this homework, we need to get it done. How would you finish this? So I think a lot of parents don't collaborate with their children. A lot of
Yeah.
parents just tell their kids what to do, but collaboration will set her up for
Mhm.
success in the long run because she will grow up being able to make her own decisions on how to structure her time and her energy.
Right. 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 Thank you so much. That's really helpful. That's really helpful. Thank you. I think we've spent 1 hour
Yes.
talking about this, and it's been, I wish we wouldn't have to stop, but this is where we have to this is where we have to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Lola,
Of
for sharing
course.
your valuable insights. Thank you, and your experiences and how you have been able to navigate it and how you've been able to build relationships and define your relationships as well. It's been
Yeah.
really, really helpful. Your story will surely help create more understanding and empathy. I think that's one thing that a
Yes.
lot of people miss out. A lot of people miss out in these conversations. Empathy goes a long way.
It
Thank you
does.
so much. Thank you, Lola. And
You're
yeah, for
welcome. Thank
everyone who has
you.
listened, yeah, thank you. Would you do you want to say anything to everyone before we just go?
Yeah, I mean, whether you're someone with ADHD or a loved one for someone who has ADHD, be curious and be compassionate, for yourself and for others.
Mhm. Thank you so much. And that's where we wrap it up today. Thank you everyone for joining this live and see you some other time. Bye bye.